Good morning, good morning. Today is Youth Base Elul, and we are beginning chapter Lamed Hey 35 on page 266 in Shaar Hayichud of the Mittler Rebbe. We were learning about Yaakov and Israel, focusing on Israel, which means the way the Midos, both are alluding to Zov Malchus, of course, and Yisrael is the way the midos are maturing, all the way to the ability to govern and live from the ratzon of the person, from the keser of the person, the moichin of the person, rather than instinctive reaction, emotional reactions. And this is called Yisrael, and this enables the neshama to overcome the tzimtzum, to overcome Shem, to prevail over and elevate that which is associated with Shem Elokim, which is the tzimtzum. So let's begin Lamed Hey, Be'ezras Hashem. Vezeu b'chinas Yisrael, this is the aspect of Yisrael, the midos, zo in its mature state, which when the midos are illuminated with the moichin and even higher the moichin keser, Yisrael sar keil, the ability to govern of the keil, דהיינו על ידי הארס הכסר בחוכמה. This is when the keser, which means the vision of the person, in Elokus, it's keser, it's the infinite, but in the divine will, in a person is the person's will, the neshama's desire and will. And that is על ידי הארס הכסר בחוכמה. When this vision, this desired vision of a person is shining, is revealed in his chokhmah, in his consciousness, shenikra keil de nehiru de chokhmasa. It is called the keil that shines in chokhmah, which means the way chokhmah is mekabel from keser. Sheha-keser hu ha-mistarer. In this case, the keser governs. The keser dominates the vision, the desire of the soul, not just instinctive reactions of the ego, any external reactions of the midos. Rather, a person's behavior is totally governed by his keser, by his vision of who he is, what he's doing here, and what he needs to accomplish. And this is what his soul desires. It's a fully aware and choosing person. וכמו שכתוב במקום אחר בעניין קיסריסה וכולו, as it says elsewhere regarding the name of Yaakov changing to Yisrael, because you were overcoming Elokim ואנשים. Elokim is tzimtzum. שם מה כן מברר שם בן, as we spoke before, and not getting into now. But this is the generally the inyan of Israel. The way the midos are illuminated by the moichin, the person's reactions are based on his consciousness, not on his reactivity and animalistic sides, aspects. והנה מעתה, now, says the Rebbe, יש להבין עניין ייחוד ישראל ולאה, שהוא ייחוד המידוס במחשבה, שנקראת לאה. Now the Rebbe says, we will analyze and understand, we need to understand two Yehudim. two things that are merging one with the other. One is Yichud Yisrael veLeah. What is Leah? Leah, Yisrael, we know already. Yisrael is Midos, Zo. What is Leah? Machshava, thought is called Leah. And now we are going to look at how the Midos are misyached with the Machshava, that the emotions are unifying with the thought. The thought is a direct expression of the emotions because there is a yichud between Yisrael and Leah, which is the yichud of the midos b'machshava, the emotions with thought. Shenikres Leah. Thought is called Leah. Then we have a lower yichud, the yichud of Yaakov, also midos, but not in the full developed, mature state, as we learn, with Rachel. So there is a yichud of Israel with Leah, as we know that Yaakov married two wives, Leah and Rachel. Leah represents in Chassidus thought, machshava, and Rachel represents in Chassidus dibur, speech. So now we are going to see how there is a yichud, the unification between Israel and Leah, the developed midos and thought, and yichud Yaakov v'Rachel, and the yichud of the lower aspect of the midos with dibur, which both thought and dibur and speech are an expression of the person's midos, especially dibur, especially speech. So now we are looking at the Yichud Yaakov v'Rachel, the Yichud of Yaakov and Rachel, Shu Yichud HaMidos b'Dibur, the unification of Jacob and Rachel, which is the Yichud unification of the emotions and the speech, or in the speech. ותחילה יש להבין בהפרש שבין ישראל ליעקב. Now we already spoke about the difference between Yisrael and Yaakov. That Yisrael is the way, or starting the other way around this time. That Yaakov are the midos that are born from the mind before we are working on them, before we are bringing more of the light of the moichin and the keser into the midos, which means the way the midos are naturally born and evolved from the mind is in a manner of tzimtzum, that only the most external and lowest aspect of the mind is now becoming the moichin and the motivation of the midos. And then Yisrael is that when the midos are growing from midos that are subjected to the tzimtzum between the mind and the midos, to midos that are reflecting the mind and reflecting the vision and the inner wish of the soul. So we spoke about that, and we focused about the growing from Yaakov to Israel in the last chapter. But then now the Rebbe says, in order to understand how the midos are invested and merged with and connected with, of course, and expressed through thought and speech, I want to make another point, says the Mittler Rebbe, regarding the difference between Yisrael and Yaakov, Bechlal, to understand, first of all, what is this middle line? Dehine b'chinas Yaakov. If you look generally at the inyan of Yaakov, we are all Bnei Yisrael. Yaakov and Yisrael are one person. So Yaakov was, and this is in reference to the rest of the Avos. We have Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Avram represents Chesed, Yitzchak represents Gvura, and Yaakov represents Tiferes, the middle line. הנה בחינס יעקב ובחינס תפארס דזו דאצילוס. Yaakov is particularly the aspect of Tiferes of the Midos of Atzilus. וכולו. שהוא, which is, Midas הרחמים, כידוע. It is Midah, the Midah of mercy, of Rachamim, of compassion. Also harmony in beauty. Why? כידוע שהאבות הן המרכבה, because the Avos, our three patriarchs, are the divine chariot that represents the Jewish soul. Avram bivchinas chesed, דזו, Avram is the chesed of the midos, Yitzchak bivchinas gvura of the midos, and Yaakov bivchinas tiferes, taf is tiferes. וכסיב, הערה 36 in Kuf Lamed Gimel. It's from Micha, Zayin Chaf, Pasuk Chaf, Perek Zayin. The Navi, the prophet Micha. And Micha says, the Rebbe is bringing the Pasuk, Titen emes leYaakov, emes leYaakov. You should give emes to Yaakov. Yaakov is associated, the middle line is associated with Midas HaEmes, the truth. So there Micha says, Titen emes leYaakov, chesed leAvraham chulu, and so on. Ve'ita bazohar is brought in the Zohar, al pasuk, v'natatem li os emes, you should give me a sign of truth. Os can be meaning two things. Os can mean a sign, and os can also mean a letter, osios. So the Zohar says about v'natatem li os emet, it should give me a true sign. Da os vav. The Zohar says, what is the letter of emes, of truth? It's os vav, the letter vav, which bechlal vav is 6, that represents zo, the 6 midos. Okay, the gematria are 6. But what is the os vav particularly representing? Bechinas Yaakov. What is Yaakov? Shu kav ha'emtzai, the middle line of the spheres, which is associated with emes. And it is represented by the letter Vav, because the letter Vav, one of the things of the letter Vav is that it is a straight line, not leaning to the right, not leaning to the left. That's the inyan of truth. Truth is not bribable. And the inyan of emes is it's the whole way through, it's the same. No deviations. That's emes. And then also, kav is a line that is drawn down. Shu kav ha'emtzai. That represents the middle line. Vav is looks like a line, represents specifically the middle line, which is called Bariach HaTichon, the middle bar. In the Mishkan, the krashim, the boards, the upright boards, were locked in their middle by all of them having a hole through which a bar was inserted. That's the Bariach. And actually a miracle happened in the Mishkan all the time, that when the bar was reaching the corner of the Mishkan, it was miraculously bending and then continuing straight again. It's one of the miracles. In any case, This bar that puts all the krashim together is called bariach hatichon, the middle lock, or the middle bar that goes through everything and puts it all together, keeps it all together. The bariach hatichon. So Tiferes, the kav ha'emtzai, the middle line, Tiferes, Yaakov, it is the middle line, the bariach ha'emtzai. Now let's analyze it more, says the Rebbe. Va'inyan yadua, by the way, also represents the kav that comes after the tzimtzum, that unifies everything. It's a representation of Or Ein Sof that unifies everything together. Bariach Hatichon, the middle bar that goes from through everything from up down and doesn't lose its authenticity even in iota. והעניין ידוע, דקו הימין חכם, הרי קו השמאל בגה, סוסו. We have the right line. Let's see why the middle line only is associated with midas ha'emes. Because we have the right line and the left line. The right line is chacham, chokhmah, chesed, netzach. What's the left line? Baga, Rashi tables of Bina, Gvura, and Hod. So the left line, Baga, is Sotzer, Soser Oto, is contradicting and opposing the right line. כמו שמידס הדין סוסר למידס החסד. Just as the midah of judgment counteracts and opposes the midah of generosity. The midah of holding back opposes the midah of giving out. Umagbil oro. And when the two of them meet, chesed and gvura, gvura limits the light of chesed. Gvura limits the light of chesed, contradicts it, opposes it, and limits it. Ulehefech, and the other way around happens too. That when chesed meets gvura, in that case, ha-chesed magbil or hadin. The chesed limits the light of judgment and punishment. So the light of chesed would limit the light of purity and judgment and strictness and exactment of gvura. ונמצא שניהם נפסקים. So what do we find? That both of them have an end. Both of them are limited. Both of them stop somewhere because of each other. Both of them can be compromised and interrupted. נפסקים. הפסקה. להפסיק means to stop. שאין זה נקרא אמס. This is not called אמס. Something that even potentially has a stop is not called emes. Like we'll see soon that there is a nahar, there is a river that is called emes, a true river, and then there is a river that is called nahar achzav or kzav or kziv. The shoresh is kaf zayin vase, which means false, not emes, the opposite of emes. It is disappointing because of its falseness. It stops because it's not completely true when its flow of water stops. So something that has an end to it is not called emes. כי עיקר האמס הוא מה שיש לו קיום. What is the main thing of emes, says the Rebbe? Is that which always is, that lasts forever. You know, we said another quality of emes, that it doesn't deviate. It doesn't change from its truth. Like a curve that goes straight no deviations. But the main thing, says here the Rebbe, is of emes is מה שיש לו קיום, that it has a lastingness. כמו שפת אמס תיכון לעד. I don't know why he stopped before לעד. שפת אמס תיכון חולו. The pasuk is שפת אמס תיכון לעד, a speech of truth, or lips of truth. Safa in Hebrew means language and lips, a lip, and spasayim, lips. So spas emes, the lip of emes, tikon, will be established forever. So the main quality, says the Rebbe, of emes is its foreverness. Ve'ad argia chulu sfat shaker, and the safa, the lip, the talk, the language of sheker, of false, is argia, is only lerega, is only momentarily. It has no lastingness. שהשקר הוא הכזב. Sheker is kazav. What is kazav? Kazav is something which is not true, that is not constant. That's what I was looking for, constant. It's not constant. מלשון יחזבו מימיו, שהנהר נפסק. Like it, לאכזב, it also means to disappoint in Hebrew. So you disappoint when you are not aligned with truth. So what is the truth of a river? That its water never stops, its flow of water never stops. A river, al pi halacha, that is not qualified to be called a halachically a river, is a river that its waters stop once in 7 years. Then it's not called a true river. It's nahar kziv, or nachal kzav. It's a false nahal. It's a false stream. Meaning, שהנהר נפסק, כידוע. That the river stops, that the flow stops, is known. So since chesed, the right and the left lines, oppose each other and therefore compromise each other and limit each other, they are not called emes, the line of emes. Ve'omnam, and it is really so, that midas ha'emes hu ha'miskayem, that it is the midah of truth that lasts. Le'yoto kalul mi beit hafachim, dechesed ugvura, because this middle line of emes includes both opposites, chesed and gvura. Be'ein monea, umenagdo klal. And that means that since the middle line includes both chesed and gvura, the right and the left, no one and nothing can oppose it and limit it. So be'ein monea, nothing prevents it from giving out its light the way it is, because it has both. Umenagdo klal, and nothing opposes it at all. Al ken lo yechazvu memav chulu. And since this river of truth, nothing can oppose it, and nothing blocks it, and nothing compromises it, that's why its waters, its flow will never disappoint. Its flow will never stop. It's a flow of emes, of truth. Vezeu os emes do vav. This is the sign or the letter of truth, which is the letter of vav, kava emtzai, the middle line, the line of emes. Shekalul mi chesed ugvura, which includes both chesed and gvura, the right and the left, vehu dati, and that's the middle line, which is dati happens to be the translation is in Hebrew is frum. Dati, he is a frum person, is that ish dati. So the dati is Rashi Tevos, das, tiferes, and yesod, the middle line. Das, tiferes, and yesod. as we discussed already before, כמו שכתוב למעלה בעושר כ"א, chapter 21. So this is one maila in Kav HaEmtzai, in the middle line, that is called Os Emes, the Kav of truth, that it is including Chesed and Gvura, including right and left, and therefore nothing opposes it, and nothing stops it or compromises it. And therefore, the divine hashpah of the middle line, and specifically here, we're talking about Tiferes, which is called Havai in Kabbalah. All the spheros have other names, but Tiferes is the one sphere that is called by the name of God itself, Yud Kei Vav Kei. Chesed is Kale, and Gvura could be Elokim. But Tiferes is Havai. Why? Because Havai represents Or and Sof. And it is the special virtue of Kav HaEmtzai, of the middle line, to transmit and be a channel to Or and Sof without compromise. In its truthful state. And now, together with that, the Rebbe will point out another maila of Kav HaEmtzai that never stops and never compromises the truth. ועוד יש מעלה בקו האמצעי דתי. Another maila, which is connected to the other maila, in the middle line, which is dati, das, and Tiferes, and Yesod. And that is that the Vav is from up down. It's the same. It's one thing from up down. שאין בו שינוי מראשו לסופו. Unlike the other two lines, in the middle line, there's no change between the top of the line and the bottom of the line. כי כמו שהוא בראש, כך הוא בסוף. Just as it is in its head, so it is in its end. ולא ישתנה מצד אריכוס המשכסו למטה. And it does not change because of being brought down lower and lower. And it is not like this in the other two lines, as we'll see momentarily. והוא, and that is, מצד חיבור וקשר שיש בכולו מראשו לסופו יחד, כמהוס אחד, כבריח התיכון, המבריח מן הקצה העליון לקצה התחתון. Why? Because the Vav is the power of chibur. That's why it's called the middle bar that connects everything. And in grammar, everything is perfect in Torah, in its language, in the holy language, holy tongue. Vav represents chibur. Ve means, when you say ve, means end. You add something. So it's a connecting letter. It's called Vav HaChibur. Vav is the connecting letter. When you want to connect between two things together, you say ve, this, and this, and this. You connect one thing to the other. And why it is like this? Because of the chibur v'kesher, of the one tie and one connection that is there in the entire kav, from Or and Sof to Keser to Chochma to Das to Tiferes to Yesod, all the way to Malchus. Malchus tends to go to the right a little bit. But all the way to Kav HaEmtzai, from the top to the bottom, it's the same truth. Doesn't change. The same light. Doesn't change. Kemaus achas is one maus. It doesn't change. It is not so, you will see in a moment, in the other two kavim. And that's why it's called Bareach HaTichon. It's the middle bar that connects everything from top to bottom. Why the connection here is not horizontal. The connection that Kabbalah brings to the Bareach HaTichon is milamala lemata. It connects like horizontally also, but here the idea is it connects the top with the bottom, the top world with the bottom world, the top spheres with the bottom spheres. המבריח מן הקצה העליון לקצה התחתון. That locks and bars and connects the upper end with the lower end. מה שאין כן בייס הקו ימין ושמאל. This is not the case in the true lines of right and left. שאין בכל אחד מהם בחינת החיבור והקשר. That in each one of them there is missing this aspect of connection and bonding everything together. It doesn't have these two right lines, the spheres of the right and the left lines do not have a quality that the middle spheres have, the middle line spheres have. And that is the barring, the connection, the power to connect everything together. על כן, therefore, לא יימצא בסופו כמו בראשו. Therefore, if you look at each line and representing the spheres of each line, you will see that the lower sphere is not identical to the higher sphere on that line. It's not at the same. כמו חכן. Like if you take the right line, חוכמה, חסד, and נצח. Okay? So הרי בנצח ייגרע אור השפע. Let's say we have an insight in חוכמה and we want to express it through chesed, okay? And netzach has to overcome all the obstacles. That's it, okay? That's kabayamin. But you see that netzach is not identical to chokhmah, to the insight, and not identical even to the midah chesed. Netzach is just overcoming. It's another quality. Yes, it's connected, but it's not the same. Netzach is not the same like chesed, and chesed is not the same like chokhmah. They change as they go down. V'chen behod. And so to hod is very different than bina, even though it belongs to the same line. V'chayadua b'inyan netzach v'hod. And we know that both lowest spheres of Nehi, we discussed it at length, aspects of it, the netzach and hod, the lower spheres are the applicative spheres. They are called, you know, they are called in Kabbalah, Tren Badei Haravos, the two branches of willows that we are using on Sukkot. So the whole meaning are representing the spheres. The esrog is the heart, the lulav is the moichin, and then you have the hadassim, chesed, gvura, tiferet, and then we have netzach and hod. We have in the two haravos. What's the thing of haravos? We know the kids always learn this one has taste and this one doesn't. This one has taste and smell. This one only has a taste and no smell. This one has smell and no taste. And this one has no smell and no taste. What is that? The haravos. The haravos represent the least chayus, the least revelation. No smell and no taste. No makif, no pnimi. שאין בהם טעם וריח. They don't have a taste, they don't have a smell. Why? Tam represents moichin. Tam means reasoning. Tam v'das. And reach means this tainug, desire, the makiv, keser. והוא מפני שנפסק בהם הערס המויכין. Why are they called, netzach and hod are called, the action aspects of the spheres are called aravos, because the ha'ara from the moichin, the inspiration of the moichin stops, doesn't reach them. It gets very compromised. Of course, it's just enough for the netzach to be in fight, but not the whole inspiration and the whole emotional inspiration and the spiritual inspiration. All this on Netzach V'Hod you don't find. כי החסד רק ענף החוכמה. Because in the right line, chesed is only a branch that goes off chokhmah, out of chokhmah. שהשכל והטעם שבחסד כבר חלף ועבר עיקרו, ולא נשאר בו רק בצמצום והיעלם. Because if you compare between the sechel and chesed, the sechel v'tam, the reasoning, the whole mental inspiration that led you to want to do chesed, already is gone. And now when you're engaged in doing the chesed, you don't feel the inspiration. It's enough. Omnam adayin yesh bo behelem. It's there, but in a hidden way. You're not, when you are cooking the cake for your sister, you know, because she doesn't feel well, you want to cook a cake for Shabbos. The time that you are cooking the cake, you are involving in the ingredients and how long it how to set up the thermometer of the oven and how to and for how long and how to wrap it and how to bring it to her. You're not the sechel is not shining at that point. It's there, just in hidden motivator. And so too the emotions, they get compromised. אבל מופסק ממנו. So if you compare between chesed and chokhmah, it's מופסק ממנו, it's separate from it. ואין ביניהם חיבור בקשר כל כך. And they don't have such a strong connection like the connection between, soon we will see, between the spheros in the middle line, that they are all the same. They are all one thing, they're all connected. Not the same, but connected in one thing, one entity. And this is also expressed in the form of a human body, that we know that the moichin is the head, right? And the chesed is droa yemina. Droa in Aramaic is zroa with a zayin and without the aleph at the end in Hebrew, which means the arm. Okay? So chesed is droa yemina, is the right arm. That's chesed. But when you look at chesed versus the head, it's not the same. Koach hayad yamin shenifsak min hamoach hulu. You're looking at the power of the right hand and the right arm, but that's separate from the moach. It's not the same like the koach of the moach. It's different. And also bchinas hanetzach, which is the lowest aspect of the right line. שהוא ניצוח ההסכם לבד. What is left in chesed, at least you have the emotion that is left, you know, and the motivation to do kindness and so on. But in terms of the ניצוח, meaning that הסכם לבד, what is left, we learned about it before. I think it was there in Chaf Aleph, if I'm not mistaken. But also recently. The Netzach is the end of the הסכם. Netzach is the inyan of the resolution, the decision to act. That's what is left. Nifsak min hamoichin, the chokhmah. Yoter, it's even more separate from the moichin of chokhmah, the inspiration. It's just a resolution, I'm doing it. Next page, קל"ד. כי לא נשאר בו רק רושם בעלמא, because what is left in the right line in Netzach, in the lowest part of it, only a reshimu, only an impression, only a trace from the ava v'chesed, from the love and kindness that was felt in the heart, והוא כמו הירך הימין. And that is like, if you go to Netzach, is like the right foot, the right leg. The right thigh, הירך הימין, the right leg, שנפסק מחסד שביד ימין. At least the chesed שביד ימין has some connection to the heart, to the feelings, you know, something you can see. But the legs, you know, the right, even to the moichin, the yad, the hand, there's some kesher, not the yad doesn't have, the hand doesn't have intellect, but it is a keli to write intellect, to express intellect. You write with the hand, and you write ideas. So there is some shaychus, but again, it's not the same. It's so hidden between the hand and the moichin, and the brain, in terms of the head and the activity, the koichus of the mental activity. But when you go lower to netzach, to the leg, to the foot, it's even separate from the right hand. מחסד שביד ימין. ואין לה ירך חיבור עם היד. And the thigh is not connected with the arm. Even physically. The thigh is not connected, the leg is not connected to the arm. וכך ביד שמאל, and so to the left arm. וירך שמאל, and the left leg, שהן בבחינס קו השמאל, בגה, which is the left line, בגה, בינה גבורה and הוד. מופסקים זה מזה. They are separate from each other. They're not one flow. They're מופסקים, הפסק. הפסק. על כן בסופו לא יימצא מראשו. And therefore, at the lowest, you don't find the highest. It's not the same. מפני הפסקה שערס המוחין. It is because of the interruption of the light of the מוחין, of the brain, of the mind. עד שיוכל להיות שם גירעון לגמרי. And that happens, such tzimtzum, can be so intense that it could also happen that the two extreme lines of right and left can be subjected to the clause of klipa. כמו ותקע כף ירך יעקב. That the hip of Yaakov was dislocated. שנגע בנצח. That the malach of Esav, the angel of Esav, touched Netzach, the sphere of Netzach of Yaakov. Begid Hanashe, that's the abbreviation here. Gimel Yud Hey Nun. Gid Hanashe, the Nashe sinew. In I think it's the sciatic nerve, if I'm not mistaken. On the left thigh. עד שמקבלים חיצונים משם, כמו שכתוב בזוהר, to the extent that there is such tzimtzum and separation and lack of one flow between the higher and the lower spheres, that the lower spheres of the right and the left lines can give chayus to klippus. The chitzonim, the outsiders, meaning the klippus, can suck life from them. As it says, Bazohar, binyan yerech sota, the thigh of the sota, of the woman who was not loyal to her husband, and if she drank from the bitter waters with the name of God erased in the waters, there was a disintegration of what is mentioned there, that there was a disintegration of her thigh and her abdomen. V'hainu hatam, the reason for that fact that the outsider, the klippus, can have yenikah, like suction of chayus from the higher spheros, is gamken bechug atzman, is also in chesed and gvura themselves. Because you see in the story of the Torah, כמו שכתוב, במה שכתוב, אברהם יצא ממנו ישמעאל. That Avraham, who represents Midas HaChesed, Yishmael came out of him. representing the klipa of the right. שהם מוסרי ופסולס החסדים. These are the dross, the waste, that which was extracted as a waste of the chasadim, of kedusha. So they became chasadim of klipa. ויצחק, and Yitzchak that represents Gvura, the left line, יצא ממנו עשיו. We're focusing on Tiferes, so it's Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. I'm focusing on the Midos. So that's why the focusing is, we're focusing on Zoh Atzilus, meaning Midos, meaning Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, the main three. So Yitzchak יצא ממנו עשיו. Yitzchak, Esav came out of him. Mosrei ופסולס הגבורה חולו, which is the dross and the waste and the extraction of gvura, of kedusha, of holiness. אבל יעקב, however, Yaakov is different. שהוא בחינת קו האמצעי דתי, which Yaakov is the middle line, Das and Tiferes and יסוד, הרי יש בקו זה חיבור וקשר מראשו לסופו. In this line, there is a connection and one bond from head to toe, עד שימצא בסופו כמו בראשו ממש. To the extent that you can find at the end of it, at the lowest part of this line, exactly what there is at the top of the line. כמו שידוע, ואין קישוי אלא לדעס שבראש. And in one example that he brings is that there is no erection by the male without having das in the mind. When the male gets aroused, he will not get aroused, that represents Yesod, if not for thinking of the female and concentrating on the female in his das, in his mind. So what do we see? הרי קשור בחינת היסוד בדס. We see that Yesod, which represents the reproductive organ, is connected to das, to the mental connection. שבמוח הראש, which is in the brain of the head. כאילו הן מאוס אחת. Just as if they are one entity. And so it is in you see the close cashier between the heart and the mind. That there is, in the mind, appreciate something immediately, there is a positive reaction. And when there is a feeling of kindness, of a wish, to connect and to mashpia chesed, immediately Yesod is aroused to connect one way or another, by doing a favor, by this, by that, could be starting with physical. I don't know if he brings it here. Yeah, it brings it later, okay. שהרי הדס הוא פנימיוס המאיר ומקושר ברחמים שבלב. Because we see that das is really the inner force that shines and connected with the rachamim, with the compassion that person feels in the heart. והיו לאחדים תמיד, and they're always one, they're always unified. You see that the person, why people say that children could be very cruel to each other. Sometimes you see children can be very insensitive and cruel. Sometimes they are wonderful and they're playing nicely, but at the same time, children can be very cruel. An adult person would not say or do what they do to each other at times. And it can be very cruel. Why? Because אין בהם das. A child doesn't have das yet. So he doesn't have the awareness that develops, that right away will create compassion and make sure that he will not be an achzar, will not be so cruel. because there's a very intimate connection between compassion in the heart and the das in the mind. That's why, by the way, uh, it's good also even physically. If you have a problem with the company, try to go to the highest person there, because that person has more das and has a more all-inclusive. Is like the moichin of the company, and hopefully has more das, but rather than the clerk there by the counter that will be more reactive and less das and less chachamim. So this is the Lord, give me the next. But the higher one will might show compassion because he is closer, he's the head, he's das. כמו בין החוכמה והחסד הנ"ל, ומכל שכן החיבור אל השפעת היסוד, and how much more so a חיבור to the השפעה, how יסוד is משפיע, שהוא בחינת איסקשרוס המשפיע אל המקבל. That in יסוד, what is experienced in Yesod is the connection and the bond between the Mashpia and the Mekabel, the giver and the receiver. שהוא בא במהירוס מן הדס, that comes speedily from das, which means there has to be a yichud pnimi. It says, Chazal say that in Kabbalah also, without a yichud pnimi, people can have an intercourse. But not every intercourse brings to holadah, to children, to birth. And in order to be able to give birth, there has to be a yichud pnimi. There has to be a unification between the father and the mother, the avaim, a deeper yichud that is involved also tainug, pleasure and willing and willing each other and so on, the will to unify and so on. And then there is toladah, there you can have fruits. So you see there's a very strong kesher between the mind and yesod. As it says, V'adam yada es chava chulu. That when it says, the Torah says that Adam and Chava lived together and had children, it says, V'adam yada chava. Adam knew Chava, means that they were together. Oyadati itchem amar Havai. I know you, says Hashem. It means I love you, I care for you, I have compassion for you. I want to mashpia. If a person feels chesed or feels love, immediately Yesod wants to mashpia, to give. So we see that there is a strong, steady connection that makes the kava inside the middle line, all the way from top to bottom, one thing, one unit, and therefore represents emes. It doesn't change, doesn't get weakened, doesn't get compromised. It just changes its expressions, but not its tochen, its content. And so it's called emes and represented by the letter vav, unlike the two other lines that are not called kavei emes, and they have a change of the nature of the ashpah from the top to the bottom, and we'll continue next time, Be'ezras Hashem.